So when working in a ceremonial space, a plant medicine ceremonial space, sometimes I get the question around what to do with unwanted energies or entities or spirits or beings that are not pleasant, right? They seem to be interfering your field and you want to know what to do about this. And there are a few suggestions that I normally offer depending on that person's experience and also just getting a sense of how they view the world. Basically, the real question is, how do we interpret these experiences? And how do we relate to our interpretations? So that is a vast spectrum, and not everyone is going to be coming from the same path of how they're going to be relating to what they are determining as, let's say, outside forces that are bringing up a lot of discomfort or bringing up stuff that is too challenging or too dense to know how to metabolize or integrate or just simply know how to interpret. And so one of the key things for any plant medicine ceremony that is foundational, and this is what was taught and learned by Maestro Hamilton, who I worked with in Peru for 8 months. He offers what he calls the technology of sanctuary. Sanctuary is a code of consciousness, and it's based upon pillars of truth. And so what these pillars are is, before you begin your ceremony, you invoke sanctuary, and sanctuary's first tenet is God is in, through, and all around. In, through, and all around God. Okay. The second is time is infinite and space is eternal. This is something that if you've done plant medicines before, you may have had experiences of being out of time or in no time, or time itself bends or dissolves or works in ways that are different than the conventional day-to-day experience. If you've also had a deep meditation practice, for instance, or spontaneous sort of revelations, you may have also come to have this same realization that there is a non-fixedness to time, and when we can actually enter those spaces in which time works pretty differently than how we're used to it working, it really starts to open up. And what it can open up into is the experience of the infinite. And so the infinite nature of reality, the no beginning and no endlessness of time, which essentially just brings one into a constant flow and a constant flux of nows. Now. That time we're thinking about in the past that we call the past, that was just a now at that point. From that perspective, when you were there experiencing that period, that was just now. That was just happening now for you. And it's the same with the future. There is no future. There are series of ways to be more realized that we're only ever in the present. And when this can settle in at a really, really deep, foundational, fundamental level, I mean, this is just it is endless and it's vast and it's eternal. It's eternal. So the eternity question is, space is eternal, right? There's the way that I interpret this, and this is always subject to develop and evolve, is there's like a basis. There is a basis that is unobstructed. There is a basis that is, there's a fundamental aspect of reality that is impenetrable to it being to it ever ceasing. And whatever that ceaselessness is one of the ways I interpret eternity. And so the second pillar is time is infinite and space is eternal. And the first, God is in, through, and all around, right? And then we have the third, which is sanctuary. This code of consciousness is self-balancing, self-harmonizing, self-healing, self-grounding, and self-orienting. And my gosh, when you are deep in a journey or a visionary quest, or even just in your day-to-day life, and you're just dealing with the multitude of things that are going on in everyday experience, to be able to invoke sanctuary and to call forward into your consciousness this deep understanding, this deep invocation that there is a self-balancing aspect at work already. There is a self-harmonizing aspect to nature already. Nature and reality is fundamentally self-healing. When we get a cut, it just works the best that it can to heal itself. And the healthier we are, the more we are able to continually regenerate this health and resilience. And we have the self-grounding aspect. We are grounded every single day by Mother Earth. Mother Earth is giving us this ground that we walk on. We have this stability in this, we have the stability of gravity to literally keep us grounded, so that when we are feeling ungrounded, it's not that we're physically ungrounded, but there's ungrounded emotional aspects, or there's ungrounded energetic aspects, mental aspects. But essentially, if we can come back to something that is inherently grounded, this is very grounding. And Mother Earth is and has been eternally grounding for us, for human beings on planet Earth. And so we are so thankful for you, Mother Earth. And then we have the self-orienting. This has been huge for me personally on my journey. And the self-orienting, or the self-orientation, is, what are we returning to with our awareness, with our attention, right? What is this sort of ground of belief structure? Where do I ground out? Because I can have a lot of dynamism of, especially undergoing an awakening process, there can be a huge flux and dynamism of a sense of self, of who I am, because it's evolving and it's changing. And these identity structures that maybe I've carried with me my whole life, that I thought I've been and who I am, is now all of a sudden starting to become a little bit untethered or unraveled, or it's starting to lose some of its firmness. There are new questions that are coming in. And so the self-orienting property, I see this as what are we inherently believing about reality? Where do our interpretations foundationally, how are they set? Because if we have deep programming that is constantly sort of destabilizing or it's regurgitating stories or old stories that are really truly not in service to our well-being and to our highest good, then the more we have awareness about this playing out, the more we can orient to something that is actually healthy and healing and for our well-being. And so some of the things that I orient to are just the other properties of the third tenet of sanctuary, which is life is self-healing. Life is inherently self-balancing and self-grounding and self-harmonizing. And so to be able to really let that land is something that I can reorient to. And then also just the work that I have done and, shadow work and all of the ways to try to have deeper understanding of where I've come from and where I'd like to go, and sort of be able to assess where I am in the present moment, what I'm experiencing, what is coming up for my attention, and then learning how to attune to that is part of this orientation. I want to be oriented to self-respect. I want to be oriented to self-love. I want to be oriented to inner peace. I want to be oriented to respect and reverence for others and life itself. And so learning to build that foundational stability is part of knowing how to orient our awareness and our attention. And the fourth tenet of sanctuary is that sanctuary is infinitely protected and safe. And if you've ever done plant medicine before, you know that you want to go into that ceremony with that one, with just feeling like you are inherently protected and safe. And this is a big one for us because we have not been, culture has basically taught us the opposite. The world that we've been born into and the culture and societies that we've been born into have not reflected to us that we are inherently safe and protected. We have been given the message over and over and over again that life is scary and super unsafe, and we are unable to just be and exist without having our guard up, without having walls up, without having preparation for a fight or a flight or a freeze or a fawn or whatever it is. And so when you can be in a ceremony and when you have the beautiful guidance of an incredible shaman like Maestro Hamilton, who is just setting these foundations, and he is setting them not just for you, he's setting them in his own consciousness, right? So when a shaman is holding a high level of consciousness, it is on behalf of all of the beings. It is on behalf of all of the sentience in the room, but also beyond, right? Because we're not in time and space at this point. We know that consciousness, when you tap into those eternal and infinite aspects of consciousness and you declare them safe and protected, and you are a cleaned out vessel who can hold that realization, it is therefore safe and protected, truly. And one of the things that I've learned is when I inherently know that at the deepest levels I am loved, that I am protected by divine intelligence, by divine love, the more that I know this, the more that I know that anything that counters this in my experience, the way that I interpret this is it's a purge. It's literally a purge of that fear. It is a purge of the untruths. It is a purge of the memory of old. It is a way to relate to the discomfort, to the fear, to the pain, to the ancestral trauma, to the karma, to all of it through the lens that this is actually coming up so that it can come out, so that it can be given to sanctuary, which is God everywhere, as a self-harmonizing, self-healing, self-balancing, self-grounding, and self-orienting being, mechanism, truth. Like, wow. Wow. So basically, I can surrender into the experience, into the flow of experience, especially during challenges, because somewhere deep in my psyche, I know that I'm safe. And when I am being shown all of the opposite signs and signals, I know I'm in a ceremony with a shaman who can hold it all, who has the mastery and the integrity and the experience to hold it all, and is holding that level of remembrance when I myself have fallen out of remembrance. And is this not a metaphor for the time that we are in, where so many of us are awakening to deeper realizations of connection with what we call the divine, or what we call God? It is that there is a deep remembrance that is always open and available. And it is us. We are on this journey of remembering. We are on a journey of returning to our essence, to our clarity, to our true nature. And so this is just something that I find so beautiful that I wanted to share with you all. And the part that comes into play around other energies, around what we call, in many of the traditions, there's a sense of negative and evil, right? And also just in our mythologies and in our religions, like it's been everywhere that there's a sense of negativity and evil, and we can go into that. Those are whole streams, whole pathways of how to relate to that. But the core thing that I just want to try to piece together here is that anything that we must be very diligent and discerning with how we use our language and our thoughts in knowing if we are creating more separation, if we are creating events of separation, of othering, right? And this is a really deep dance for us, because we are also learning how to have very needed boundaries, very needed clarifications, very necessary resolutions of integrity and sovereignty. So this is a deep portal into what does it mean to be merged with all that is? What does it mean to be one with all that is? And then also I have all of these opinions, or we have all of these opinions about goods and bads and shoulds and shouldn'ts. And we start to compartmentalize and we start to categorize. And we do this as a necessary stage of development, a necessary step, I believe, in our being able to process and metabolize what feels good in our systems and what doesn't feel good in our systems. But I see that essentially we reach another place where we become a little bit more fortified, therefore we can actually put down some of the hard defined goods and bads, shoulds and shouldn'ts. We can start to soften these categories when our foundations have been built a little bit more, when we have a little bit more sovereignty, when we have that self-respect, when we have that self-love, when we have these deep pillars that are our inherent worthiness, and then peace becomes part of our protection. That we're not just protecting ourselves from stuff out there, but that our own inherent vibration is our protection. Our own inherent vibration of inner peace, inner tranquility, inner stillness, inner love is our protection. When we can walk with that and trust that we can walk with that, it is going to become mirrored. Doesn't mean it won't become challenged. It may become challenged, absolutely. Absolutely, especially if this is a new way of being, if this is some new dawning of consciousness inside of a context that has not been favorable to inner peace, because we've sort of been in a inner war or an inner conflict within ourselves, and as such that's been reflected, let's say, in our family home, or that's been reflected in our friend groups, or just in the hobbies that we're into, or in the jobs that we've taken on, that there's some real dissonance. This time is a time of integration. This time is a time of recognizing our fragments and starting to find ways to bring more coherence. And so, first off, determining that inner peace is your birthright is a great start. And then having the other pillars of something like sanctuary is also super, super helpful. Again, whether you're in a plant ceremony or you're just living life. And we have, other pathways like the Buddhic pathways, the yogic pathways in which we can find the inherent emptiness in all that is, or we can come into these realizations of our godhood with all different ways of realization, all different aspects of infinite realization. And if we have these deep pillars of core health and healing that is starting to come online for us, then we can explore emptiness and recognize that there is so much in emptiness. And that emptiness itself is not some excuse or pathway to nihilism, because we as a vibrational being will be more fortified. And so we don't need to necessarily be protecting, constantly sort of controlling our protection out in the world or in ceremony. We can start to surrender and to let this love break down these walls, to let this clarity clear the path, to let the sanctuary of consciousness, the heaven on earth consciousness, start to do what it has always done and what it will always do, which is it will always lead to harmonization and balance if we let it, if we choose it. Our choice is fundamental here. So I hope some of this has been illuminating, helpful. I'm just here riffing, and I love being able to share this medicine with you and to share part of my journey of who I am with you. And I hope that you have a blessed day wherever you are, returning into the present moment wherever you are. And yes, much love to all of you.